All right, this is the Artful Painter, Art Book Talk number 2, and I'm here with Kyle Buckland. Kyle, welcome back.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, it was. We had a great discussion last week of some of our books. We just ran out of time with
hmm
Lorenzo Chavez and you and you guys made me go poor. I bought 2
Easy
sets
to
of
do.
books. Now, one of them wasn't
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So, Lorenzo, was it you or Lorenzo? I think it was Lorenzo had there was an Edgar Payne book, which I bought. I found it relatively inexpensive. It was about $25. So I
hmm
bought that. But you remember in episode 52 of The Artful Painter, you talked about the Monet catalog by,
Oh, yes.
and this is not one of my recommendations today because I haven't read it. But my
hmm
wife called out yesterday. She says, "Honey, you got this huge box out on the porch, and I can't lift it. It's too heavy."
Oh, yeah, you got the set.
I got him.
Yeah. I just those books, they just made me go crazy when I was younger. I would just bury my head in those books and just, I would try to figure out what in the world, how I thought Monet had special paint or something. I thought he had to have had secret colors that he wasn't telling anybody about. But yeah, those are great books. And the first book has a lot of literature, and then the rest of
Yeah,
it's just all pictures. And some of them are small, but just just
yeah.
just to see the amount of work that he produced is
Oh yeah.
amazing.
Well, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and buy it. I found a set, um, and this is a little tip on eBay. I think the set there's a handful. Most of them go from anywhere from 160 to $600, and some of
hmm
the higher priced ones will have the slip case. These came in a slip case. Mine did not, but
hmm
I didn't care. It was okay. Uh,
hmm
so so this set here started off at $100, and so I just started watching it. And some eBay sellers, what they'll do, eBay does this thing where it'll automatically suggest lowering the price once a week. So I just sat there and watched
hmm
that thing, and he would lower it $5, and it got down to $64, and I just pressed up. And there was 6 watchers at that point, and I said, okay, yeah, time to
Wow, yeah, that's a
time
great
to
deal.
yeah. So I paid $64
Yeah.
for it with shipping included in that price.
hmm
So
Yeah.
anyway, that's just
That's
a nice little tip
yeah.
to watch it, be patient. Of course, sometimes I let them get away too, Kyle. I'll,
Yeah.
I'll wait too long and somebody hits the buy button and oh well. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Those
it's,
sets are nice.
yeah. Well, let me just lay the ground rules for today. We're going to talk for about an hour about some of our favorite art books. If you're with us, you can join us in the chat. If you watch this after the live stream is complete, we'll still interact in the comments section. So let us know what some of your favorite books about art. They can be art theory, art history, art biographies, art essays. There's so many different topics on art. Art moves people. And so the literature is just amazing how much is available out there. Not all of it is good, but a lot of it is still fascinating. So we're going to talk about a few of our favorite books today. So, Kyle, I'm really happy to have you here, and I'm going to start with you. You can go first. So hold up the volume that you want to talk about, and
Okay.
we'll go from
Well,
there. Okay, I'm going to
the
turn the screen over to you so that you can show the whole thing. So let me just get me out of the picture here. You're going to go solo.
all
There we
right.
go. There.
Okay. So the first book that I have I want to talk about is a little book, not a big book, but a little book. It's called Hawthorne on Painting.
That's a
And
great book.
see if you can get it there. And Charles W. Hawthorne, um, this is a great book. If you've been studying John Carlson's book and some of these more painters that were more classically trained and more interested in values, this is a great kind of a foil for all that knowledge about values, because Hawthorne stressed the importance of just getting the color tones correct. And so his theory and a lot of his teachings were about that we can kind of leave some of that knowledge behind, or set some of it aside, and just look at the big shapes of color, and putting one color next to the next another color, and not to say that value is not important. And this is what I love about art is it's like, you can kind of zone in on one area for a little while and then zoom back out and get into another
Exactly.
philosophy, and they can kind of balance each other out. But Hawthorne was very much interested in teaching his students just to grasp the big essentials of nature. And so I think, and this book in particular is really neat because it's a collection of his teachings. So some of these lessons were put together by his students, and then I think also by his wife, who put these together from his notes and from his just his lessons on teaching. So it's almost like it's written in a very kind of an organic, flowing way. It's not broken down into too many sections, but it's almost like if you're there watching a talk or an art talk, or taking a workshop or a class, and just hearing this kind of free flow of ideas come from Hawthorne. And he would say things like, look at the way the landscape is silhouetted against the sky. On a cloudy day, that the landscape can become one big silhouette against the sky, and then get those few tones and just put them up there. And so that's a nice contrast to John Carlson, who says you should be able to show every foot of recession into your painting.
Yeah. One thing about that book, just the writing style, it's almost like he's written a letter to you as an artist. I mean, I know
correct,
it's but it has a letter feel to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's similar in style as far as the way that it's written to another book that I think we'll talk about, The Art Spirit. But it has, in ways, it's I think it even has some critiques in there where his students would show him pieces of work, and he would tell them, this is working and this isn't working, and here's why this works. And so it really is like getting to experience his like being in his class. And he would paint large outdoors. So.
Oh yeah. When was the book published?
This edition, so I'll see the original edition, first published in 1938.
Oh, okay.
Is the first edition. So
it's not in the public domain yet.
No. But it's not a real expensive book. This is just a paperback, kind of a new updated a newer edition. But just, like I said, some of his stuff is quite different than some of the other teachings that in the other books that we talked about, specifically Carlson's. But his concepts were approachable, and he sort of took some of the more complicated themes out and just taught people to really just look and to see, what trust their eyes. And I think there's a section in here where he says, I don't really care about the roundness of a head. He said, when I'm painting a figure, if I get the color of the background to come against the color of the edge of the face, the roundness will take care of itself.
Right.
So I think he was trying to simplify some aspects of painting for the reader.
That kind of reminds me, you can almost, if you're doing a landscape and you have tiny figures in it, you just kind of do like a little carrot and a dot. And it's amazing how the human mind will resolve that as, oh, those are people there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got
our
that
imagination.
From watching, go ahead. The lag is messing me up.
Oh yeah, I hear that too, and I'm coming through a little blurry this time, but I don't know. But the viewer's imagination can play a role in perceiving what's going on, and I think that is something. There's something to be said for that when you leave a little suggestion, for the viewer to participate in the viewing of the painting, and like you said, with a figure, you don't have to get in there and draw every little bit. If you can get the gesture and the colors down and just put them in there. Then it allows the viewer to participate in the actual in the piece and fill in some of the blanks.
Oh, that reminds me of where I saw that was, I don't know if you've heard of Peter Mould. Uh-oh, I lost you. There you are. You back?
I'm still here. I can still hear you. I'm back.
Yeah. You never know how the bandwidth stuff is going to work out here. But I was just mentioning Peter Mould has this YouTube series. He's an art dealer in England, and it's called Art in Isolation. And it is fascinating because he films everything right there at his house. His son is using an iPhone to film everything, but the quality is actually outstanding. I think it's a well done show. He goes through what he has in his collection. Of course, some of those items are for sale. You will sell some of the things that are on his wall. After all, he is an art dealer. But that was one of the things. I can't remember who the artist was because I'm sitting here and I'm old and gray cells just. What do you do? But I do remember seeing this painting, and you look in it, and he draws your attention to these little figures. And they're basically just little carrots with a dot on them, but you resolve it as figures. That's a fascinating show. It's not a book. It's a show. It's on YouTube, but I highly recommend it. Art in Isolation.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I'll do a book, and then we'll go back to you.
All
How
right.
about that?
Yeah, sounds good.
So I have an eclectic collection. I'm going to go solo mode so I can show, so you can see my bookshelf behind me here. And it's been an obsession for many years to collect books on art. I mean, I like many types of books, but because of my interest in learning how to paint, I naturally navigated to not just how-to books, but books of inspiration, people that I liked. And so this is one that I bought a couple of years ago. Visual Music, The Landscapes of Clyde Aspevig. Have you seen this, Kyle?
I haven't. I think I've seen it, but I've never been able to look through it. Yeah, I know of Clyde's work. Excellent painter.
Yeah. Well, I think it was about 3 years ago that I attended a lecture by Clyde Aspevig here in Atlanta. He was here in Atlanta, and it was really fascinating because he was very open-minded with painting. He's not a pontificator. Pontification gets you in trouble because you might declare that the earth is the center of the universe, and then the telescopes might reveal otherwise, and then 450 years later you have to do a retraction.
Yeah.
So we got to be a little bit flexible there,
Yeah,
so
good point.
yeah. So some folks, I've talked to and read, they have a very bleak view of modern art. And I'm not saying that we should like it, but Clyde Aspevig was saying we should embrace the ideas because it encourages exploration. And I think it was interesting in his book. It's on page 15. He just says, by subordinating details, creating abstractions, employing unusual compositions or techniques, we can create more knowledge gaps. These little questions or mysteries pull the viewer into further analysis, and the artist encourages the quest. And I thought, wow, that's it. That's what I like about painting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we were just saying. You allow the viewer to come in and play a role and to investigate a little bit. At the heart of what we're doing is abstract design. So underneath of every successful representational painting is an abstract design that works. So I think that's very, very smart. And I think you can see that in Clyde's work too, that he's open-minded and looking at, and if you zoom in on work, I mean, you get intricate little abstract sections that pull the viewer in. So,
well, that's what I noticed about his work. There was a painting that was hanging in the Booth Museum here in Georgia, and I would spend, I'm tempted to say hours, but that wasn't the case. I don't know too many people that can stand in front of a painting for hours without raising suspicions, right? So, but I did look at it for a long time, and of course, like artists do, we look close. We look at it differently than what the public does. So I was looking at those, and that's what stood out to me in my mind with Clyde's work is there was this very abstract quality. You get in close, it's hard to resolve what it is, but as you pull back, you can see what it is. But this is an absolutely, this visual, it's an older book. It was published in 2010. There was a hard copy version of it. Mine's a paperback version. It's hard to find an affordable copy, but if you just be patient and put an alert out for it or a search, you'll find it. But the reproductions in this particular one are just absolutely beautiful. It's kind of, I thought I would hold a picture up, but I don't think it doesn't do justice to put it up on. Well, I'll give you a taste.
We'll see. Yeah.
See. So.
Oh yeah.
It's a beautiful volume, and I was very much inspired by this. It's not the most affordable one, but I like these catalogs. Now, not all of them are good. I bought one by a well-known artist not too long ago, and I was extremely disappointed in the publication quality of the book. You know, I've got it. It's in my library, but all the reproductions are blurry, and they really took shortcuts in publishing. And I was very surprised because this particular artist had actually published a number of I don't know what do you call this type of book? It's
is it? I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's it's not necessarily a catalog. I guess if it doesn't.
It's not. Yeah.
Relate to a show.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a term for it, and it just eludes my mind. But it's a relatively popular thing to do, and I like to buy them when I can if I can find them affordably. But this one here, and I have several others. Well, not several. I have two others by Clyde Aspevig. They're both older books done in the mid-2000s, and they're both outstanding too. But this one, Visual Music, The Landscapes of Clyde Aspevig, is my favorite. I highly recommend it. If you can find an affordable copy of this particular volume, the writing in it, while brief, it's profound for artists. It goes towards more about how to think as an artist as opposed to how to paint. It's more about the thinking behind the painting. So, so there's
Yeah, that's important. That's an important part, I think, is like you said, the thinking behind the painting. There are a lot of books out there about, how to mix green and how to varnish a painting. But when you get into the more, a little bit more esoteric concepts of behind, the thought process of being an artist, it can really open up a world of opportunities for you creatively.
Yeah, I'm finding myself looking for those kind of books more and more. I think I've got all the how-tos, and I haven't really mastered the how-tos. So there's so many different
pursuit.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many different opinions as to how something is done.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Anytime you find somebody telling you to do something one way, you can turn around and find an artist that tells you, no, don't do it that way. You got to do it this other way. You can really get overwhelmed trying to follow that path of, well, what color brown do I need to use, Yeah,
well, it goes back to that pontification. I remember one of the earliest books I read. Can't remember what it was, but never use black.
Yeah.
Now, you tell me something like that, the rebel in me is going to say, why?
Yeah. Give me a tube of black. Okay.
Come on.
Well, I tell my students when I'm teaching, and one of the things I tell them, and it's almost like a disclaimer, and I say, don't take anything I say too seriously, because sure enough, as soon as I say one thing, you're going to catch me turning around and doing it a different way. And I think that's the nature of the curious mind. We want to learn different ways of doing things, and we don't want to get stuck in a rut or pigeonholed into doing something one specific way.
I later learned the reasonings why sometimes the way people will put a thing that they'll lay down the law, but the law really is just a guiding principle, if you will, that may or may not apply in a particular situation. So. But anyway, that's part of our education. So what's your next book?
Okay, well, I think this is a good segue into this book because I think, I knew this book will come up sooner or later, so I'll go ahead and bring it up now. Is The Art Spirit by Robert Henri. So,
Oh yeah.
um, and this is a copy I've had around the studio for quite some time. So you see, it's got paint on it. That's not a big blemish on that boy's face.
No, that's a badge of
um,
honor.
yeah, but
That's the
it's
medal of battle.
and it's one of those books that you can just pick it up and open it up, to any page and reads a section out of it. For example, I just opened up to here, page 67. Art is the inevitable consequence of growth, and it is the manifestation of the principles of its origin. The work of art is a result, is the output of a progress in development, and stands as a record and marks the degree of development. It's not an end in itself, but the work indicates the course taken and the progress made. So, boom, all kinds of inspiration in one sentence off of a random page. And the whole book is just filled with little nuggets of quality. And what I love about Robert Henri, of course, we can go into a little bit of art history here. He was sort of the founder of the Ashcan school. So painters like George
Right.
Bellows and John Sloan and all these other painters that were painting real life. They kind of rebelled against the idyllic nature of some of the impressionism of the time, and they wanted to paint the true grime and grit of the city. And but what he goes into in his teachings is very important because it really gets to what you were talking about just a moment ago, is with the book you were showing, is that it's not our goal just to make art. And I think I'm paraphrasing here, but there's one of my favorite quotes in this book. He says, the object of the artist is not to make art, but to be in the state of mind that inevitably makes art possible. So, I mean, it's like he teaches you how to look at the world through the artist's eyes, and to not only investigate the world around you, but also investigate yourself. Self-education. What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Why is it that you're drawn to certain kinds of scenes? And how can you mold your art to portray those things that you most feel are important to you? Because that's where the true masterpieces come from in art, is when you're in that zone and you're really showing your true love and true passion for the subjects and the type of work that you're creating. And he was just just so full of inspiration. And it's funny, he was younger than a lot of the artists that he taught, but they called him the old man because of his ability to so eloquently describe his thought processes and how to light a fire under people and get them inspired to make art. So I bought this book, I think, when I was about 17, and I still to this day can open it up and just read and get so inspired that no matter what I'm doing, I almost just need to throw the book down and get to the easel and start painting. So when you've got a book like that, it's worth hanging on to. And I've actually bought copies of it and given them to my artist friends, because it's so much of an inspiration that I think any painter of any
that's
type
a
of
great
subject
idea.
matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those books that, and it's not real expensive either. So it's one of those books that's, it should be a staple, I think. Personally, I think on every artist's bookshelf.
So I have a question about gifting a book. Do you inscribe the book? Do you write a little note in the book to who you're giving it to, or
I
you
no,
send it?
I probably should. I probably should, but I mean, I've they know who it's coming from, but I probably should do a little sketch or just a little something inside of it. But it's I think it's for me, it's just it's like giving it's so much more than just giving a book when you give this type of book to somebody, because it's giving somebody a new perspective on how to look at the world around them, and that's so important for artists.
So speaking of that book and the passage that you read, as you were reading it, I was looking at the painting behind your shoulder, and I thought it
Mm-hmm.
really typified what you were talking about there. A garbage can is in the painting.
The trash can. Yeah, that's right. That's my homage to the ash can school, and the contrast of how the trash can become this object of beauty when covered in snow. Snow is magical like that. It can turn anything into a beautiful pattern and design. And I almost didn't even think about the fact that it was a trash can, and I painted that painting. And to me, it was just an element in the composition. It was balanced all the light and the view of the distance, and and I posted it on Facebook, and 98% of the response was wonderful. But then I got a couple people that go, "Oh, why'd you put that trash can in it?" And it was, I didn't even think about it. I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize." I almost didn't even realize it was a trash can. I'm just so drawn to just shapes and colors and patterns that I almost didn't think of the implications, which maybe that's I'm at fault for doing that. But then as I thought about it, I thought, well, it's nice because the laws of contrast in art. If you want to make something light and airy and beautiful, put something dark and gritty and contrasty in the piece. So I thought it worked.
It works well as a painting. I like
Well, thank you.
You see the spot of light down the road there. I'd like to see the painting in person. I'm sure it's rich with texture and color as well. But it looks really good. I like it.
Well, thank you. And as I told somebody, I think on Facebook, I said, hey, the trash can was there, and it worked. So it probably subconsciously it's part of what made me want to take the picture, because I think if you take the trash can out, the composition wouldn't be as balanced. And so I think we're trained as artists to look for those types of designs. And I didn't think twice to paint it in there. So
is that the title of it? Homage to the Ash Can School?
It should be, right?
It should be, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I should never say that. It should be, because I'm not the artist. You're the artist. You can title it.
I need a title generator. I have a hard time with titles. I need like a button that I push and it comes up with like descriptive adjectives for my paintings so that I can title generator. Maybe I should develop a title generator app for artists. There's an idea.
$1 million idea here. some algorithm behind a thesaurus and a concept.
That's right,
and an idea. Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, so yeah, that's a great book. I have it, and I pick it up from time to time to read it as well. The reason I ask about you said you gave gifts to artists of that book, and I think that's a great idea. I need to do a better job of that. I haven't done. I don't think I've given an artist a book. I probably should.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good
for students too, and people that I knew, could read, because a lot of artists already have this book. So these were, artists that were taking my classes and that were just kind of getting into painting. And I said, oh, well, while you're still kind of green on the subject, here's something to mold your mind in the right direction. So.
Yeah. Well, I think books make a great gift. And in fact, just this morning, my wife and I were boxing up a ton of books, children's books and that sort of thing that we were, and then she took and safely, of course, because we're still in this crazy pandemic, but she dropped off a set of children's book to a little 2-year-old who just absolutely loves books, which is extremely rare in this day and time.
Mm-hmm.
So we gifted the books. But let me get back to this idea of inscribing something. Okay, so this is going. I'm going to go solo on this so I can show the book. But
okay, yeah.
Okay,
Let's see what you got.
This book here was a serendipitous find. And it has probably the longest title of any book I've ever owned. And let me see if I can. Well, I'm going to hold it up like this. Can you see that it says Mérimée on oil painting? Okay, and the title of it is The Art of Painting in Oil and in Fresco. Yeah, we got to have that. Being a history of the various processes and materials employed from its discovery by Hubert and John van Eyck to the present time. Now, that's a mouthful of a title, isn't it?
Yeah. Some publisher was like, well, we can put that on the first page, but you can't put that on the spine.
Well, okay. I don't know. I have to be very ginger with this book because it's extremely old. So
I love it.
I'm going to hold. Yeah. Can you see the date on that right there? That's the printing date.
Yeah. What? 18. Is it 18?
1839.
39. Wow. Yeah.
1839. That means the book is what? Trying to do the math in my head. 182. This book here is 182 years old. It's the oldest book I have in my collection.
And I bet there's some serious information in it.
It's interesting. So let me give you, I don't know how to explain this. When I bought this book, I bought it on eBay. I paid $15 for it. I said, hey, it's an old book. What could go wrong? Nothing. You know, $15 was worth the gamble. And so I bought the book. And when I got it, there was this. Now, let me show you this. I don't know if we can see it on this old FaceTime camera.
Yep.
So it says C.W. Tice, from his much obliged friend, George C. Blackman. Newburgh, July 8th, 1848.
Wow. And just the lettering was an art back then. I mean, it's almost, the way that that makes me want to get a calligraphy pen and start inscripting all these books if I give out books.
Seeing that made me do that. I went out and bought a bunch of fountain pens.
Yeah.
Talk about a lost art, the calligraphy. But then I got to thinking, well, who was C.W. Tice? Who is George Blackman? Actually, I thought it was Leo because the way they did in cursive the letter G back in the early 1800s, it looks like a capital L. But it was actually, it was very commonplace to take the name George and spell it Geo. They always like to do these abbreviations with names, which makes it difficult for historians later, of course, But so I posted this on Instagram a couple of years ago, and an actor in Atlanta, his name is James J. Williams. He's been in a bunch of movies, but he contacted me and says, I can tell you who George Blackman is because it was in his family. He was a distant relative. Well, it turns out cool. George C. Blackman is George Curtis Blackman, M.D. He was a doctor. He was a Yale doctor. And but you think of Yale today. If you think of someone goes to Yale, they're extremely wealthy to be able to go, know. But George Blackman was very poor. His health was not in good condition back in back in those days. And for a time, he traveled to Europe. His friends suggested that he go to Europe and travel there. So he went to Paris and in London. Well, this book is published in London. And he was there in the mid-1840s in London. It's funny, he became one of those doctors that evidently was really good at the medical theater, where they do the operations and everybody observes what's going on. He became very good at that, and he finally got a job. But he was poor at that. He only had like $75 to his name or something like that. So to get a book like this, which would have been expensive for a friend, C.W. Tice. But see, that led to the next. But one other thing about Blackman is he went on to write the Handbook of Field Surgery, and he was commissioned as one of the field surgeons during the Civil War. And he wrote the handbook on field surgery for the infantry at that time. So there's
So
that
you didn't know
connection.
what you were getting into when you
No,
bought that
man,
book, the
I just
the
opened it
rabbit
up in
hole
his
of history,
description,
right?
and I'm thinking, how in the world? But so the actor that contacted me, he turned me on to who this man was. There's very little,
Hmm.
but there you can find on the internet references to George C. Blackman
Hmm.
and his biography there. So it was really fascinating. But now then I'm thinking, okay, well, who is C.W. Tice?
Hmm.
So I did a search on the web on that, and that turned out while there's not much about him, there was enough to piece the pieces together. He was the illustrator of a book written called The History of Newburgh, New
Hmm.
York, and he lived in Newburgh.
Hmm.
And he was also a painter of some renown for that area. He did
Hmm.
he did still lifes, exteriors, landscapes, and they're quite interesting to see. They don't sell for much on the market. I think auction prices I saw for Tice's paintings were around $2,000 to $4,000. So I'd like
Hmm.
to find one of those.
Yeah.
So, and by 1848, he was already an accomplished artist. You can go and find a
Hmm.
few of his paintings that were done about the same time. And so you can see why Blackman, he must have had a close friendship with C.W. Tice, who was an artist. And so he bought him a book about art. And
Oh,
so there's
cool. Yeah.
in it. So there's a provenance with this book that wouldn't have existed otherwise. I did find out
Hmm.
later that I've not been able to find a copy of this book cheaper than $500.
Hmm. So
So,
you got a little treasure there.
and there's one other little thing about the book. There are two hand-colored prints in there. They're color charts,
Hmm.
and I think this was prior to what do they call it? Uh, chromolithography. It was kind of a manual
Hmm.
color printing press technique, but it had to be done manually. In fact, Thomas Moran became an expert of that. But at this time, I don't think that technology. It was either in its infancy or it didn't. I didn't do the research on it, so I'm winging it here. But I don't think it existed, at least not on a heavy scale. So the two plates in here are hand painted, the color
Oh,
charts.
wow.
But there's
Hmm.
two pages, and I was really surprised to find them in there. But they're hand painted plates.
Hmm.
So that
Very,
I
very
would
interesting.
recommend it. Now I haven't read it. I'm afraid to read it because I'm afraid it's going to fall apart. Uh, I don't know if the
I
information's good or
wonder,
not.
yeah, I wonder if they've archived it anywhere in a digital form that you could find it, like Google, Google
Yep.
Play Books. I was going to let everybody know, the viewers know, that if you get on, some of these books, like The Art of Landscape Painting in Oil Color by Alfred East, I think is one. They're in the public domain, and Google Play Books has a lot of these books on there for free. So you can go on there and search. You can filter your results and go to free books, and then you can search landscape painting, and it'll give you a list. And a lot of them are older books like that, on landscape painting from the 1800s. And
Yeah, that's a
um,
good suggestion. In fact, I downloaded that very book after I saw you talk about it. I haven't read it,
mhm.
but I have it in my ebook library. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
that book. I recently learned, and I can't remember where I think I saw some artists talking about this on Facebook. But so do you know Edward Siago? I, I guess that's how you
Mm-mm.
pronounce his
No.
name. A British painter. He painted oils and watercolors, fantastic paintings. But that was sort of his Bible. The book by Sir Alfred East. So it's kind of neat to, like I said, to trace the lineage of these artists and see what books um, were they reading. But yeah, I think that's so fascinating to have a book with that kind of history. Your book there, because it has a story behind it, and you can almost imagine. The painter, I can't remember the fellow that the book was given to, flipping through
C.W.
those
Tice.
pages, and
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, C.W. Tice, and and honing his craft, and learning the craft of painting by pouring over the pages of the book. And it just has a neat story behind it. So I was reading an old book one time, and I'm not a big fan of people marking in books, but inevitably you'll come across sections where people have highlighted or underlined something. And I always thought it was interesting when you're reading an old book like that and you come to a section that really speaks to you and it's underlined by somebody else, because you instantly have this connection with this mysterious person, whoever they were, that read those same words and underlined them, So it's neat. It's quite an experience. That's you can't be it can't be duplicated by digital books. So.
Well, I have mixed feelings about marking books. I don't do it myself, and and I thought, well, I don't know. I shouldn't be stuck up on that. Who knows?
Yeah,
somebody might benefit from it in the future. I don't
know. I've never done it myself, because for me, I can't stop looking at the section that's marked. So I have a hard time, reading the rest of the page, because my mind keeps going back to that underlined section. What was that about? Wonder why that was underlined, and then it messes with my train of thought when I'm getting into the book. But you do see it a lot.
But when you get a book this old and you see that. Of course, it's just the inscription. There's no other writing in it, but it is fascinating to see what were people thinking. I bought a book one time. I bought this book one time at Goodwill. It's a terrible book. Well, I shouldn't say it's terrible. It's interesting because it's musicians who became artists. So it's like the Tony Bennett's and that, and some of them were pretty good artists, but that was a slant. But I opened up the book and there's this big, long, passive-aggressive breakup letter. I guess the boyfriend.
Oh, gosh.
So it was given by this woman to this. Well, actually, they were in school. I think they were high school students from the way I was reading it. So the guy is the recipient of this book as a gift from this girl, but she's really letting him have it for dumping her. So, my goodness. And what did he think of that? Well, he took it to Goodwill and dumped it. So now I've got this passive-aggressive missive that it's angst-filled, and but I know it was serious to them, but to me it's humorous, to see.
Yeah.
So it tells a little story behind that book. All right. Yep. Well, you got another?
Yeah, and so I'll talk about these books together because when I was younger, I read these books. I got them out of the library at the same time, and I read them together. And this was probably 15, 20 years ago. And so I got them back out. I actually purchased both of them recently. But they focus on one of my favorite artists, N.C. Wyeth. So this first book I'm going to show you is The Wyeths by N.C. Wyeth. And this is a collection of letters, the N.C. Wyeth letters, so all throughout his life. And these are edited and compiled by Betsy Wyeth. So that's Andrew Wyeth's wife. So N.C. Wyeth's daughter-in-law. So, there were the three of them. There was N.C. Wyeth, and then Andrew Wyeth, his son, and then Andrew's son, Jamie Wyeth. And all three of them are fantastic artists. But for me, I've always been attracted to N.C.'s work because of its impressionistic color and his ability to design. I'm big on composition. And so for me, I've always been drawn to N.C. Wyeth's designs. And he luckily wrote letters all throughout his life to his family. He traveled to different places to get different experiences, and he wrote back home. And he also wrote letters to his teacher, Howard Pyle, who ran, this is kind of an aside, but he ran the Pyle School of Art in Wilmington, Delaware, which happens to be the city I was born in. So there's still an art studio there. You can go there today, and it's an artist. I can't remember the artist that's in the building now. But he taught several different illustrators that became really well known, Schoonover and Harvey Dunn and N.C. Wyeth. So during the golden age of illustration, during the 20s and 30s, these were all really big names. And he really taught them to get into their subject matter, and to, he said, if you're gonna paint knights, in a sword fight, go ahead and put on the armor and carry the big sword around for a little while so you know what it feels like. And he taught them. So a lot of what N.C. Wyeth passed on to Andrew Wyeth came from Howard Pyle. So not a lot of people know that. But the other book that I've read and that I'm reading alongside of it is this biography. It's N.C. Wyeth by and I think it's David McKellis, a biography, and it's great to read this and at the same time reference the letters, and you can follow along in chronological order.
Idea.
So yeah, it adds just an extra element of interest to the storyline, because you're getting the firsthand stories from NC in the letters, and then you're getting to read the biography. So, for example, when he was younger, when he was in his 20s, he wanted to paint Western pictures, and Howard Pyle said, "You need to go out west if you're going to paint Western pictures."
Right.
He had never been out west, so he sent him on this trip out west, and he took a train out to Colorado, and then he went and worked on a ranch. So during the whole time, he's writing back to his family. And to make a long story short, he actually got out there and he got a little bit too much experience, because he got a job carrying mail, and he was riding on a mule across the desert by himself to take this mail, and he got held up by a gang of bandits who stole everything. Yeah, and it's really ironic, because he wanted to paint these paintings of the tales of the Western bandits, and so he wrote back to Howard Pyle, and he said, "Well, guess what? I got my experience." But yeah, they left him high and dry. They took all the mail, they took his mule, they took everything, and he had to walk like 11 miles to this next town, and he didn't have any money or any food, and then he had to work on a ranch for several months to get the money to get the train to come back to Wilmington, and the whole time he's writing letters. Some of them he wasn't even able to send until he got back to where there was a post office, because that's how desolate some of these areas were that he was staying at. But so it's great, because you're getting to read this story about him going out there, and then you can say, oh, it says that he went to this rancher's house and asked if he could get a job there. And then you look, and he's got the letters that, in the other book, there are the letters that he was actually writing while he was staying at the rancher's house and working on the ranch. So just a great dynamic quality to read, the biography, and then to be able to reference the letters. So
you're costing me money, Kyle.
I know that's what's going to happen now. We keep doing this. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm going to be expanding my art book budget after this. So. I'll tell my wife I'll have to blame it on you and the art book talks. But
oh man, well, we'll provide links, and there'll be affiliate links, paid links. But I don't know if you're going to find some of these books.
yeah. So, but yeah, I love, and a lot of people know of Andrew Wyeth's work, and and you talk about elements. My mind's always going to all these different ideas. But we were talking about earlier about the abstract qualities in a painting, and so Andrew Wyeth was really big on that. If you look at some of his paintings, they're very realistic, but then at the same exact time, there's this quality of mystery and abstract quality to them. And people don't realize that, a lot of that came from his dad just instilling in him this, this love for life and for everything that you paint, get into it and really be able to portray a feeling or a mood in your piece. So there's a museum in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, the Brandywine River Museum. And if anybody ever has the chance, they should go check that museum out, because it's basically the Wyeth Museum, and they have the N.C. Wyeth paintings, they have Andrew Wyeth's paintings, and also Henrietta Wyeth, who was Andrew's. I think I'm going to get this mixed up now because there's so many of them, but I think Henrietta Wyeth was Andrew's sister. And she taught Jamie Wyeth in NC's studio. But I'm rambling now, but you can go there and you can take a tour of NC's studio. It's still there, and it's all part of the museum package. You can go there and see the museum and go take a tour, and just a fascinating legacy of artists when you get into looking at the Wyeths and what all they've done. So
I would like to do that. I know my wife and I will probably stay on the road once this pandemic is over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But a few years ago, we had the privilege of going to the Olson house in Cushing, Maine, which is not have anything to do with us, but, it was cool. It was called the Olson house, but it was Andrew Wyeth's place where he painted Christina's World, and we stopped by and saw that. There was no one else there, just us. Yep. That and a mule. There was a wild mule running around, and that was about it. But it was a pretty cool place to go visit when we were in Maine a few years ago. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, Jamie Wyeth.
Yeah,
Jamie Wyeth has a house on Monhegan in Maine, so I think he did a lot of work out there.
Very nice. Yeah, I've got two books. I can't remember the titles of them. Since I'm not doing the recommendation, I'll have to talk about them later. But I've got a couple of books by them. Yeah, and I had the privilege of seeing some, not just illustration work, but his painterly paintings. He wanted to be a painterly painting, not just an illustrator. And I saw there's one here. There's a woman that lives near Newnan, Georgia, that has a nice collection in her home, and she gave me a tour of her collection, and it was just really fascinating. She had Wyeth and Leyendecker and several others. So I could have spent hours doing that.
Wyeth's easel paintings, a lot of people know him for his illustrations of Treasure Island and things like that, but he really did some magnificent easel paintings. I mean, he always was thinking about that in the background of his illustration work. Is he didn't just want to be an illustrator; he wanted to be a painter's painter, like you said, and he did some amazing work.
She had one of his easel paintings, and it wasn't very big, but it was quite beautiful. It was really I learned something about him that I didn't know before, that he had that interest in the easel paintings. So that's good. Great recommendations there. I love that. We'll have to.
Well, thank you.
Now you'll send me the links to these so that I can set up the links in the description here. And everyone, I have to be real patient with me. It probably, if it's not today, it'll be in the morning that I'll put all the links to the books, or at least most of the books that we've talked about. We're coming up on an hour, so
oh gosh,
do we got time for one more? We got one more?
Yeah. Do you have one more, or do you want me to go for one more?
You go for it.
Okay, let me take just a second to compliment you on the painting I see over your shoulder. I'm having the problem that you had when you were talking to T.J. Cunningham. You said you couldn't talk. You kept looking over his shoulder at the painting behind him, and I see that now. So that looks, the light is just really popping off of those mountains. It looks really, really like I could just kind of dive right into that painting and go explore up in those peaks. So,
well, but I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to go do that painting again. One of the lessons I've learned from talking to a few artists is don't be content. A lot of times we'll do one and it's done, one and dones.
Yeah.
But you don't really master it until you've done a few. So I'm going to do that one again. You could say that's my second one, because the first one was a plein air. I did it on location at Sneffels Ridge in Ridgeway, Colorado. And so I did that one. It's close. It's nice that everybody can only see it blurry, and it makes it look really, really good. But there's some things that I'm not happy about it. So I want to I'm going to do it again. But I love light, and I love that popping. It's kind of a Dan Young influence. I like the way Dan paints, but I don't want to be a Dan. I don't want to paint just like him, but I do like some of the things he does. So.
Well,
So
it shows a great understanding of value and that edge lighting, and keeping the value of your sky low enough so that that light really pops is an important lesson to learn. And I
yeah,
can see that's really working for you there. So,
yeah. Well, I appreciate
um,
that. Yeah,
so
yeah.
okay. So
Okay.
before we run out of time, I'll talk about one more. This is a book by Charles Sovek or Sovek. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. Oil painting, develop your natural ability. And a great painter. He passed away maybe about 10 years ago. And I wanted to show this book because it's a how-to, but it's really special to me because what happened, and here we talk about inscriptions. So you can see here, it says, I don't know if you can see this, but it says, to Kyle, best wishes from Charles Sovek.
Well, that
And
makes it special right there.
exactly. And what happened is I found his work online when I was younger, and I think I told you I kind of
Hmm.
started to be like a sponge for knowledge and was looking up all these different painters. And I loved his paintings. And on his website, he had a list of books, and they were books like Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting and The Art Spirit by Robert Henri and Hawthorne on Painting, and all these wonderful books. And he says on his website, he said, if you have collected all of these books on this list, I will send you a free copy of my book.
Oh,
And I started
wow.
looking. I started looking at the books, and I said, I've got every one of these books. So I sent him a nice letter and said, I love your work, and I've got all these books. And and he sent this book to me. So it's you could tell he's self-published it, put the old the spine on it that you clamp
Yeah.
together yourself, and he inscribed it and sent it to me in the mail. And it's just wonderful. So his name is Charles, and then Sovek. So if your viewers
I've
want to
not
check
heard
out
of
his
him. I
work, I
want to
don't
check it
know.
out. Let me go back to solo for
Yeah.
you so
So
you can show the whole thing. Yeah.
okay.
Very
Yeah.
good.
So Charles Sovek, and great painter. He painted in acrylics and oils and did landscapes and still lifes and figures, and just a really well-rounded painter, and had a very approachable way of teaching the fundamentals. So we don't have a whole lot of time to get too much into it, but I will say if you can find it, I'm not sure if it's still available. I haven't even looked. But if you can find it, grab up a copy of it. And if nothing else, just search his name online and view his paintings, because great, very expressive and very direct. And he was painting plein air before it was a thing.
Yeah.
Before plein air painting exploded. So.
Wow, that's awesome. I learned something there. That's incredible. I'll have
Mhm.
to check it out. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, man, I tell you what, this is fun. I've really enjoyed this conversation, Kyle. You really add a lot of
Yeah.
depth to these recommendations, and I deeply appreciate it.
Well,
Y-
thank you. I appreciate you having me. And it's fun I'm sure my wife appreciates it, because she gets tired of hearing me talk about art and art books with her. She said, good, go down there and talk to everybody else about it for a little while. So, uh,
Oh,
no,
our
I like
dear.
my wife, Jennifer. She's great. She's also a painter too, but I can talk somebody's ear off about art. So anytime you want to have me.
Yeah, well, yeah, we'll do it again, definitely. Well,
Mhm.
but yeah, I know not everybody likes to read. I used to have a podcast about photography, and my co-host, he hated to read. He just hated to read. So I could never talk about a book. He said, no. But
uh,
the beauty of art books is they have lots of pictures. So even if you don't like to read, a lot of these
that's
books
right.
have
Yeah.
pictures, and we can learn from those pictures. So I love books,
Well,
though.
yeah.
Yeah, and I've
Well, I
learned so
enjoyed seeing your
much.
books too, and the story about the old book. That's just great. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I live for. The history of those books, and just the, like I said, the added elements of surprise to something like that. It's just wonderful.
It is. It's just I did. I love mysteries like that. Like, okay,
Hmm.
who was this person? Because I want that connection with that person. I think that's one of the
Hmm.
many reasons why I got into painting is, you go into a museum or even an art gallery for living artists, and and you see the painting, you've got a physical connection with that person that painted that
Hmm.
artwork.
Yep.
And I was a software developer, and of course, I got nothing to show for it. I really don't. I mean, I have experiences and friendships and things like, but I don't. there's nothing I can point to anyone say, I did that. That sounds egotistical, doesn't it? I don't mean it to be egotistical.
Well, no, I think as artists, we want to have something tangible to leave behind. That's probably a desire that's just ingrained in us as, we want to leave the world with a little bit of magic. So,
yeah, I want to mention, I meant to do this when we had our interview for the Artful Painter podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I know, and just before we started this live stream, we were talking about music. It always fascinates me that artists are multi-art disciplinarians. And so I just wanted to let people know you also record music. You like to play.
I do. Yeah. If I have a couple tunes on SoundCloud, if people want to go and search Kyle Buckland. I'm just kind of getting into recording music. I've been playing guitar since I was 9 years old, and really into blues music and old timey music, and sing. I sing too, so it's just always been something that's just been part of my. It's like a nice balance when I'm done painting. I can unwind by playing the guitar. So,
well, visual music. Clyde talks about the rhythm of music.
Yeah, there's so many analogies between painting and music, and so many similarities when you get down to it, into creating, that goes into creating a piece of music and a painting. So it's not a far leap for me, anyways, to get from painting to music.
Well, very nice. Well, I guess I need to wrap this up. So if you want to learn more about Kyle's work, follow him on Facebook. He's always posting there, and Instagram, and kylebuckland.com. You can see the URL on the screen here, and you can find out more about The Artful Painter at theartfulpainter.com. And I will be beginning recording new episodes. I took a hiatus of about 3 or 4 weeks. I needed a break because I wasn't getting any painting in, And
yeah, you gotta make time for painting. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody was very kind and allowed me to do that. But next week I'm going to be recording an episode with Mitch Baird, and I will also be setting up more interviews coming up in 2021. So I'm looking forward to sharing those experiences. And Kyle, we'll get back together again, and maybe Lorenzo will be able to join us after he finishes up the project that he's working on. We'll do this again. It'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks because I got to get the podcast going now. So I got to spend time on that. But in about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll do it again.
I've got a few more art books. So.
All right. That's good. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks, Carl.
Bye-bye.